You ever have one of those days that feels like it could only happen in a bad TV drama? Except it's your life and the crazy stuff just keeps piling on until you start wondering if maybe you're the one who's lost it. Yeah, that's how I'd sum up the morning. My wife, who just so happened to be the brand new police chief, opened our front door in uniform to find Karen, the neighborhood HOA president, waving a folder and barking about official business. Only this time Karen picked the wrong house to mess with. And believe me, it should have stopped there, but instead it kicked off a chain of chaos that turned our entire community upside down and dragged us all the way into federal court. See, Karen, her real name's Marlene Blackwood, but nobody calls her that. Always acted like she was judge, jury, and executioner of Oakwood Heights. The woman had a sixth sense for sniffing out the tiniest lawn violation or minor mailbox tilt, and God help you if you tried to reason with her. She showed up at my door that day, a locksmith in tow, convinced that some emergency safety inspection gave her the right to barge in. She was clutching this thick stack of official documents, all printed and highlighted, and I could see the poor locksmith already regretting his life choices as he shuffled his feet behind her. She launches into her spiel, citing made-up sections and urgent violations, talking about structural modifications and improper storage. I'm standing there barely awake, trying to keep my cool. I've designed 3 homes in this neighborhood. I know the HOA rules better than she does. I tell her, Mrs. Blackwood, I think you've got the wrong info. There's no such rule, and I'm not letting anyone inside unless my wife's home. That's when the temperature drops about 20 degrees. You people think you can move in here and do whatever you want, she shouts, eyes bulging, voice echoing down the street. I've dealt with your kind before. And she starts frantically dialing 911 right there in my driveway, screaming about obstruction and emergency powers and who knows what else. What I didn't know at the time was this was only call number 1 out of 7, all before lunch. And while she's ranting, my neighbor Eleanor is standing at her window phone out documenting every second. 20 minutes later, the cops show up, 2 young officers who look about 12, if I'm honest. Karen spins her victim story, dabbing at her eyes, swearing up and down that I threatened her, that I'm violent and dangerous, all because she's just trying to keep the community safe. Before the situation can get more out of hand, Eleanor marches over all 5'2" of her, waving her own phone. Officers. I've got the whole thing on video. She's done this to half the block. Last week it was the Johnsons. The week before the Martinez family. The air's thick with tension and Karen's face has turned this deep, mottled red. And just as the younger cop starts taking statements, we hear a car door slam, and then my wife Diana strides up in full police chief regalia. The mood shifts instantly. The officers straighten up. Karen nearly faints. And for a split second, I almost feel sorry for her, almost. Diana's cool as ice asks Karen to explain her emergency powers, and Karen, sensing the tides have turned, doubles down, screaming about police corruption, how I'm getting special treatment, the works. She pulls out her phone and starts recording, narrating for her social media followers about being intimidated by the police chief right there on her own doorstep. Let me back up a sec, because if you think this is just about a crazy HOA president with too much time and not enough common sense, you're dead wrong. When Karen realized she wasn't getting in our house, she didn't back off. She escalated. Within hours, her video is blowing up online. Police chief threatens innocent HOA president. Comments pour in, some people screaming about corruption. Others backing us up, sharing their own stories about Karen's intimidation tactics. Our neighbor Eleanor, bless her heart, drops her own video, uncut, time-stamped, everything showing exactly how it went down. But Karen's not out of moves. She calls an emergency community meeting at the rec center, floods the place with flyers warning about police corruption and the criminal element moving into our block. She's got her supporters, mostly the older residents, who still believe the world is ending if someone paints their mailbox the wrong color. The meeting turns into a circus, Karen waving her arms, demanding my wife's resignation, painting herself as the lone defender of truth and justice. Here's where the twist comes in. Eleanor stands up, folder in hand, and calmly, methodically lays out Karen's entire track record: fake violations, families pushed out, homes sold under duress to some company called Summit Properties. Tom Rodriguez, a quiet guy from Oak Street, gets up and says, "Yeah, she tried the same thing with us, but my brother-in-law's a lawyer." The crowd starts to shift. For a moment, it looks like Karen's iron grip on the HOA might actually crack. But Karen isn't done. She starts shouting about secret evidence, financial improprieties, a giant conspiracy. The meeting devolves into chaos, people shouting at each other, Karen storming out promising revenge. Eleanor catches me and Diana on the way out and says, "We need to talk now. There's something you don't know about those property records." The look on her face tells me this is bigger than neighborhood drama. The next morning, Eleanor invites us over. Her dining room table looks like a crime lab, maps old blueprints, documents she's dug up. Turns out property boundaries in Oakwood Heights have been shifting for years, always benefiting the same small group, Karen and her buddies. The paper trail leads right to Summit Properties, which has been buying up houses at dirt-cheap prices and flipping them for full market value. Dig a little deeper and guess who owns Summit? Karen's ex-husband. Suddenly, every odd thing Karen's done starts to make sense. But the real shock comes when Eleanor shows us confidential documents, bank transfers, corporate filings, even a business card from an FBI agent. The feds are already investigating Summit Properties for a multi-state fraud ring, and Eleanor's been feeding them info for months. The entire neighborhood, all 17 communities, are just cogs in this massive operation. Diana's cop instincts go full alert, and just as we're connecting the dots, there's a knock at the door, Karen flanked by 2 suits. They sit us down, throw out veiled threats about privacy violations and harassment of legitimate business operators, and try to scare Eleanor into silence. But Eleanor stands her ground, and that's when Karen's mask finally slips. She's not some harmless busybody. She's ruthless, desperate, and dangerously connected. We get a call from the FBI telling us to get out immediately. Turns out there's a mole in the investigation, and we've all been compromised. We slip out the back, barely ahead of black SUVs rolling into the neighborhood, and for the next 24 hours, we're bouncing between safe houses, debriefing with federal agents, and trying to figure out if we're the hunters or the hunted. And then out of nowhere, David, Karen's own son, contacts me. He's been working with the FBI, secretly recording every conversation, every meeting, every threat. His mother found out, tried to kill him, and now he's on the run too, with a flash drive that could take down the whole operation. The story he tells us is horrifying. Karen's not just harassing people, she's been involved in actual criminal conspiracies, including the murder of her ex-husband, to cover up the original property fraud. The evidence David hands over is enough for the FBI to move, and this time for real. As Karen and her partners close in on us at a roadside diner, federal agents sweep in, arresting everyone involved, including Karen herself. She completely loses it when she sees her son has turned her in, but by then the show's over. The FBI starts rolling up the entire ring across 5 states, rescuing families who'd lost everything, restoring property lines, locking up people who thought they were untouchable. 6 months later, I'm sitting in a packed federal courtroom as Karen faces down 36 felony counts, including fraud, racketeering, and murder. Eleanor's the local hero. David gets a second chance, and Diana, cleared of any wrongdoing, is back as chief, tougher than ever. The neighborhood's changed, sure, but it's better people talk, they look out for each other, and nobody's scared to stand up to a bully no matter how much power she thinks she has. Now there's a community garden where Karen's mansion used to stand. And every spring, the neighbors gather plant flowers, swap stories, and laugh about the time the HOA president tried to run the whole block like a mafia. It's wild thinking how close we all came to losing everything because we trusted the wrong people to lead us. But if there's one thing this whole mess proved, it's that regular folks can fight back, and sometimes the good guys actually win. So here's what I want to know. Where do you stand? Was justice served, or did the system just barely pull through? Have you ever seen someone abuse a little power until it spiraled out of control? Drop your stories below, because if there's one thing I learned, it's that we're only as strong as the community we build together. And hey, if you want more tales of ordinary people fighting back against extraordinary odds, you know where to find me.